When trading options in Trade Unafraid, there are a few things you need to understand. First of all, due to regulations, Trade Unafraid cannot trade any contract that you do not explicitly give permission to be traded. So that's the first step, is for you to approve the expirations and strikes that are acceptable to choose from. Trade Unafraid will never trade any option that is not included in your list. Your list can include all available options or as few as a single contract. Once that list is defined, the next step is to tell Trade Unafraid how to choose from all the allowable options which one to trade. There are a few ways to set that up. Finally, there are option filters, which can keep you out of an option trade entirely if there are no options that pass your filters. These can change with market conditions, so there may be times when no options pass your filters and other times when multiple options meet those criteria. In order to trade any options at all, you have to give Trade Unafraid a symbol. So we'll type in SPY, and when we exit that field by pressing tab, for example, then Trade Unafraid knows that that is the complete symbol. So we'll go down here and select option, and you see that option filters show that there are 0 options that pass the filter. Now, coming back up to the top, you see that there's an empty list here. This list is the list that I referred to. So first, you can select your expirations, and you can, by default, you will get the 2 front expirations, but you can choose whatever you like. So since it's SPY, there are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday expirations. So I can restore those 2. I can select any others I want. I can go out as far as 2024. So that's expiration selection. So now, then there's also which strikes. So if you're long, or if you want to be long, then you're going to need calls. Right now, there are no calls selected by default. You can just give it blanket permission to just select all calls. And now you see that there's a very large list of calls here. So you're basically saying to Trade Unafraid, the universe of calls that you can choose from is every call, whatever strike it is, for these 2 expirations. If you want to get more specific, you can, get rid of an expiration. Now you see that only the April 29th are available. And then you can click select options, and you can actually manually select exactly what you want. So if I only want to consider the 424 call, then that's it. When I click outside of this box, then you see that that's the only possible option to be traded. So here's where you define your, by regulation, the contracts that can be traded. Okay, so that's the first step. The second step then is the option selection strategy and filters. So there are basically three strategies that we can take here. By the way, I will point out that we can trade short options. So far, I don't think anyone using Trade Unafraid does this, but by default, we're long options. So the first choice is tightest spread. What that basically means is we're going to monitor, Trade Unafraid is going to monitor all of the available options in your list. And actually, let me make this a larger list. Okay, so yeah, this one thing to note is when I changed the expirations, my selections were wiped out. So something to be aware of. When you change the expirations, then your checkboxes get cleared. So we went back to all calls for these two expirations. Okay, so tightest spread is actually going to be monitoring all of the options in your list, and it's actually going to track the spreads and statistically determine what's the average spread, what's the standard deviation, and it's going to look for the ideal option to trade at any given moment. So when your setup triggers and your entry tactic takes effect, that's when the actual option to trade is selected. So for example, well, actually, let me talk about the other strategies and then we'll talk about it. The other strategies are out of the money, one strike, or in the money, one strike. So, basically, if whatever the price is at any given moment, there's going to be one strike that's in the money and one strike that's out of the money. And as price moves, those strikes may change. So we're basically saying whenever the setup triggers, at that moment, whatever is in the money by one or out of the money by one will be the option, that the contract that is selected. Bearing in mind that it has to be in the list. So for example, if you clear all of this and you just say you want to trade the 260 calls, probably not the contract you would select at this moment, but then if you select out of the money by one strike, you will not enter that trade because the out of money by one determines specifically which contract, because it's going to be the first strike that's out of the money based on the current price. And if that is not in this list where you've only selected 260, then the trade will not be entered. So if your list does not contain what your strategy and filters determine to be the right contract, then there's no trade. It's an important concept. Now, the other thing you can do is you can use filters to keep you out of unfavorable trades. So for example, if you want to trade out of the money by one, but you don't want to trade a spread greater than 5%, then you can do this. And so you see right now we have one contract that is passing this filter. And that's because we only have one contract here. If I add another expiration, we should have, I would imagine, hundreds. Yeah, so we have 304 contracts now that pass this filter. So there may be some that have a wider spread than 5%, probably not for the SPY, but if there are any, then they are not included in this 304. You can also do the spread rather than as a percent, but as cents. So you could say, and you see right now because it's selected and we have 0, there are no contracts that pass this filter. But if we give it, say, 5 cents, then there are 42 contracts that pass. And in this case, we have both filters active, so both have to pass. But we can get rid of the 5%, and now we know that there were some contracts that are wider than 5%. But you have to be careful about this because this 5 cents is potentially a very unfavorable option. So, you may have a spread that is only a penny, but that's because the delta is virtually zero. You know, it's bid a penny and ask 2 pennies or something, or you know, it could be bid zero and, well, no, that wouldn't pass. Yeah, okay, it could be bid zero and ask 5 cents. So that still passes this, but you wouldn't want to trade that. And then there's also price range, where you can specify, I want to trade options that are between $1 and $2, something like that. And so you can see that we have 11 passing that criteria. And if we change that to in the money, okay, no change there. Yeah, so these filters are not looking at this. These filters are independent of the strategy. They're just looking at the options in the list and how many of those pass the filters. There is something else to consider, and that is, if you are trading based on a quantity basis of dollars, so let's say that we're going to trade a $5,000 position, then we have a quantity range as well. So this quantity range means, okay, you want to trade a $5,000 position, but that doesn't mean you want to trade 1,000 $5 contract, meaning that they would be 5 cents. So this way you can use the dollar quantity basis in concert with the quantity range to say, all right, let's be sensible about this. I want to trade between 4 and 10 contracts. And so you can see now I have a conflict where I have 0 that pass, but if I get rid of the price range, now there are 36 contracts where I can trade between 4 and 10 contracts given a $5,000 budget. Similarly, if we change the quantity basis to quantity and say we want to trade 10 contracts, then the filter has a price range where we can say, all right, we want to trade 10, but that doesn't mean, you know, I want to trade 10 of Amazon's, $40 contracts. So, you know, this way you have the ability to have some control, even though you're giving the software the ability to choose for you. You still have control over where it looks for these selections. So hopefully that's clear. If there are any questions, please ask in the comments and we will address them. Okay? All right. Thanks for listening.